Okay. So, Dana, here we go.
Take a moment and imagine this. You've been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Not only have you tried anything and everything to cure it, but it also causes you a tremendous amount of pain and agony. Pain medication is ineffective, and you know that you will most likely have a few months in which you will have to live in this torturous state of unrelenting pain. Physicians-assisted suicide has been the topic of an ethical dilemma for the past few years throughout the world. Some countries favor this because they believe in the right to choose a pain-free option at the end of one's life, as opposed to waiting out the inevitable and excruciating pain. As of 2015, 8 countries have legalized this based on the Euthanasia Research and Guidance Organization report updated this month. You may think that this is a topic that you'll never have to worry about. However, research done by the American Cancer Society, updated in January of this year, says that 1/3 of us in this room will be affected by cancer, and 1/5 of us are at risk from dying from it. Living in California, one of the 6 states that has legalized this, and having a hospice and oncology nurse as a mom, I have seen the many times that my mom has debated this topic with her colleagues. Physicians-assisted suicide is a topic that should be allowed at the discretion of a patient given certain guidelines. So when is it appropriate? Well, the person going through pain and suffering should have the right to ask for aid in ending their life. The topic that's being discussed here is the autonomy of a person, respecting the ability of one to make their own decisions throughout their life. Benjamin Shibata discusses this in his 2017 article published in the Journal of Legal Medicine titled An Ethical Analysis of Euthanasia and Physicians-Assisted Suicide. He mentions that those who advocate for PASS actually state that you should respect the ability of one to make their own decision all the way throughout their life, especially in asking in aid in ending their suffering. He's also quoted saying that PASS serves as a legal means for physicians to enable deaths of individuals meeting certain requirements, but does not guarantee it. A pro-cons article updated in July of 2018, titled State by State Guide to Physicians-Assisted Suicide, mentioned that each state that has legalized it has their own set of guidelines that must be met in order to take part in the PASS treatment, most of which are the same. The patient must be 18 years or older, they must be a resident of the state that they are in, they must have been diagnosed with a terminal illness that will result in a death in 6 months or less, and they must be able to make a conscious decision. And in California only, they must be physically and mentally capable of self-administering the aid in dying drug. So who makes the decision? Well, first of all, the person that's responsible for making the decision has to meet the guidelines that I stated before. But second of all, and most importantly, the ultimate decision should be made by the patient. Patients going through end-of-life care go through many symptoms, many of which are very painful. A study done by Dr. Jay Cho, released at the beginning of this month in Seminars in Arthritis and Rheumatism, titled Palliative and End-of-Life Care in Rheumatology, discussed the results of over 150 patients going through end-of-life care. An overwhelming majority of about 80% were reported having extreme pain, anorexia, and difficulty of breathing throughout their last few months of life. This is certainly not the quality of life that one would hope to endure ending their days. Another study done in The Lancet in 1996, titled Euthanasia and Physicians-Assisted Suicide, Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel surveyed actual oncologists and oncology patients, most of which fully supported the PASS treatment in cases of unrelenting pain. Also, he mentioned that almost half of all oncologists have had the request of going through with PASS treatment, and 1/7 of oncologists have actually gone through with the treatment. One such occasion where PASS would have been a welcome relief and dignified option came from a story my mom told me about one of her patients. As I mentioned before, my mom is an oncology and hospice nurse at Mission Hospital. She told me that she had a patient that was in her late 30s, loving family, husband, 3 kids, and a great support system. By all means, she had every reason to live. After 4 years in remission, her cancer came back. She went for her initial hospital visit to rid her body of bacterial pneumonia. what should have been a routine procedure ended up with her intubated and sedated because her immune system was so low. To get her off the ventilation, they had to do a tracheostomy, which is essentially a tube that goes into your throat to allow an accessible breatheway. This decision was made for her by her husband. Because she couldn't eat because of the tracheostomy, she had to get a G-tube, which is a tube that goes into your stomach so that you can get nutrients. Furthermore, the meds that she was on caused a bacterial intestinal infection called C. diff, and she was in the hospital for so long and already so thin that she got a bed sore on her lower back. So these two combined called for the need for a rectal tube so that they could maintain the cleanliness of the wound. So to recap, she has a tube in her throat, stomach, and rectum. She is conscious and in unbearable pain because the cancer had now spread to her bones, and she cannot talk, but my mom recalls her using the whiteboard that she used to communicate, writing down, "Just let me go, I really just want to die." They had to take her off the medication in order to see if this was an actual request of death. This resulted in even more pain and a definite request of death. Because my mom's hospital is Christian, they cannot go through with the past treatment, and so the ending treatment was to increase her medication so that she's unconscious, but at this point they have no way to gauge her pain levels, and she passed away 4 days later. Benjamin Shibata, as I mentioned before, discusses the roles of physicians and how their role is to follow the protocol in his or her state. And so if they're in a legal state and they refuse to follow protocol, they do face the possibility of a lawsuit. But he also discusses the autonomy of a physician is at play here, where they should, if they don't agree with the protocol, they should be able to refuse treatment. Overall, the roles of the physician is simply to administer the treatment and not to make the final decision. Physicians-assisted suicide is a highly dignified option to allow the passing of our loved ones and maintain patient autonomy. It is appropriate in the event of an impending painful death, and the decision should be made by the patient. Compassion and dignity should be at the top priority at this very intimate point in one's life. We give options on how to come into this world: epidural, no epidural, at home, or in a hospital. So the autonomy is there at the very beginning of one's life. So why, if we can see the end, should we take the autonomy of one away?